today to our presentation, and we're going to be talking about toxic employees when conflict can't be resolved. What a wonderful, fun, exciting topic, right? All of you, I know you joined it today thinking, I absolutely love working with those employees that just can't seem to resolve conflict with either their peers or with me as the leader or manager. And just in case, if you missed it, the last 3 weeks of this series, we've walked through, in the first week, we kind of walked through just negativity as a whole and how to keep it from infecting your workplace. Then we talked about, on the 11th of June, coaching employees, so more of a one-on-one type of situation, walking through that with them. And then we also walked through conflict resolution for teams last week. If you didn't get to join us for any of those, you can check those out on our YouTube channel, youtube.com/the Group. And today, though, what we want to do is jump into talking about toxic employees and when conflict can't be resolved. So real quick, let's go ahead and do a quick poll question here and kind of an open-ended question as well. So before we jump into comment about some leadership styles and things like that, real quick, just answer that question for us. Do you have or ever had a negative employee that you avoid? If you've ever had anyone that has worked for you that you avoid like the plague. And then next to that, you can just type in a short answer, why do you avoid them? And what is it, why, what are the reasons behind why you avoid that person? So I'm seeing quite a bit of you say yes to the fact that you've had or maybe had at some point a negative employee that you attempted to avoid. Now, obviously, as a leader or a manager, it's difficult to do that, right? Because we have to lead, we have to manage, we can't just check out completely. Maybe you're not the leader or manager, but you are a part of the HR team and still have that individual that you try to avoid. So I'm seeing quite a few answers and reasons why. Seeing negativity, too stressful, draining, they ruin your day, always challenges you, right? They kind of play that devil's advocate role. Too stressful, it kills morale. Maybe not receptive, not coachable, right? So they're that negative employee that just is not coachable, and that's why you tend to maybe avoid them. Some great insight, great responses there from you guys. And really, here's the thing to remember with toxic employees or those negative employees that just don't seem to want to resolve conflict is that you have to remember this, that first off, we all have a leadership style, right? We all have that. There's all different types of leaders, all different types of behaviors that we exhibit. Each one of us is unique. And although we have our own leadership styles, there's always those people on a team or seems to be that person that you showed up this morning and maybe you have that person on your team now, and it's almost as if you heard like that dun dun dun, when they walked in the front door, and you immediately shut your door, or maybe there was that tension that immediately entered the room when they came in this morning to work. And they're that employee that we tend to avoid, or maybe team members tend to avoid. And what we have to keep in mind is that we've got to work through that. We've got to find what works best in those situations to work with that difficult individual. And we're going to talk about that today. We're going to talk about some next steps, how to handle that person, the communication tools that we have available to us as leaders, as managers, and also kind of the makeup of our team. And that's what we're going to roll into first here. And question for you first: does one bad apple really spoil the bunch? I mean, maybe you've heard that before, right? One bad apple spoils the bunch or spoils the barrel, however you want to say it. But does it really happen? Does that really apply? Interesting statistic for you that good employees, this is from a Cornerstone report, good employees are 54% more likely to quit when they work with a toxic employee. 54% more likely to quit. So we just push them over that 50-50 barrier by allowing a toxic employee to continue to be on staff. Maybe we've tried everything to coach them up. Maybe it's that at that point where we need to coach them out and we're having a difficult time coming to that decision or working through that process. Just remember that when we have those individuals on our staff and they stay too long, that it's going to end up pushing our good employees to the place where they may want to quit because they want to move on and not be a part of that toxic work environment, that negativity that one or maybe two individuals is bringing to the team. So something interesting for you to remember there. And the fact that as a leader, as a manager, we really do need to take care of it and work through that conflict in some form or fashion. And so, the interesting thing about a team is that there's different individuals on our team, right? There's those people that, they work hard and they're dedicated, they put their time in. Maybe it's the individual that can do 14 things at once. I'm not one of them, but there are those people that can, walk down the hallway and chew gum at the same time. Rock on to them, right? Give them a hand. But then there's also those people, maybe they slack off. Maybe they're like that guy in the picture to the top left. This is why road work takes forever to complete. I have a feeling that might actually be true. No, I'm just kidding. We actually have some road work happening right outside of our office building, and it's been going on for quite some time. I'm wondering if that guy is actually below our office right now. But we have those different employees on our team, don't we? And it's interesting to think about something, and I want to ask you a quick question when it comes to the different types of people on our team. And so another just real quick question for you here, and feel free to put your answer in. But here's the question: true or false? Typically, 80% of your employees problems come from 20% of your employees. So I'll say that again: true or false? Typically, 80% of your problems come from 20% of your employees. So I'm seeing 100% of you guys say yes to that, or true. Absolutely. Here's an interesting thing to know. Maybe you've heard of it before, but it's the 80-20 rule. It was created by this gentleman named Vilfredo Pareto, and it came up with the Pareto principle, or the 80-20 rule. And it says that typically 80% of something comes from 20% of something. So what I mean by that is, for instance, think about your meetings. So 80% of the decisions that you make during a meeting typically come during 20% of the time spent in that meeting. Wow, that is interesting to think through, isn't it? When it comes to what we're talking about now, 80% of your problems typically come from 20% of your employees. There's something wrong with that, isn't there? That really feeds into that fact that many of us live in that situation where we're constantly putting out fires, or we feel like we're putting out fires with just a few select employees. And so how can we deal with that? How can we work through that? And we have to, in order to drive our team forward and effectively meet company goals and carry forward with the vision and mission of our organization. So let's spend some time talking about the team and the makeup of our team. And what I want to share with you, I like to call it the core concept. And the core concept is something that I think applies to any team, whether it's in business or in sports or in a volunteer organization, whatever it might be. The core concept really does apply. And we're going to talk about very quickly 3 types of individuals. If you were to look at your team, you could categorize all of them into these 3 different categories. And actually, what I want to encourage you to do while we're doing this, maybe you have a team of 10, maybe you have a team of 20, maybe you have a team of 5, whatever size team you have, you could probably think through some of the names of the individuals on your team and begin to stick them into some of these categories. I'd encourage you to do that as we think through these different categories of employees, individuals on our team. So the core concept is made up of 3 different individuals, and the first one, or the first 3, here's the 3 laid out for you in this diagram here. And so you have the core. Typically our team, 20% of our team is made up of the core. We're going to talk about them for just a moment in a second here. And then you have 60% of your team, that's the developers. So a large part of your team there. So let's say you have a team of 10. 2 of those people are your core, 6 of those people are your developers, and then 2 of those people are your underperformers. And we might classify those underperformers, or many times find those toxic employees, those individuals that have the bad attitude or the negativity that's constant or just aren't coachable. Probably going to find them in that underperformer category. So the core, what's the core look like? The core, it makes up 20% of your workforce, and they are full of energy. They're helpful, they're knowledgeable, they're experienced, they're focused, dependable, honest. Put it this way, the core employees, those are those individuals that walk in the morning. You know, I kind of made that joke in the beginning. You know, you heard that dun, dun, dun. You know, when that negative employee walks in the morning, just that toxic employee that just kind of infects the rest of your workplace. The core, go to the opposite end of that spectrum. That's where the light shines down from above, right? You know, just shines bright when they walk in the door, and you hear that, ah, right? You know, sorry, I can't sing very well. Apologize for that. But that angelic voice comes in, and you are just so excited they're there for the day of work. You get excited about them being there, right? They are maybe your up-and-coming leaders. Maybe they are your individuals just solid. Maybe they don't necessarily take that front runner role, but they're just so dependable. They show up day in and day out, do their job well. Maybe they do it behind closed doors or behind the scenes, more of that support role, but still do it in a way where they're just doing a great job. And so that would be your core. The developers. Here's what's interesting about the developers. As you see some of these words pop up to describe them, they're going to look very much like your core. They're those individuals that are still dependable, they're still focused, they're still full of energy, very helpful, they're honest. All that they probably lack is some experience and knowledge. So with our developing portion of our staff, what we want to remember is we want to pour our time into them, help them gain that experience and gain that knowledge so we can coach them up into that core, continually grow that core group of our employees. And I'm telling you, if you do that, you'll watch productivity increase, watch the team momentum increase, the synergy of your team increase. So you really want to pour time into the developers as well as your core. What's sad is we spend very little time with our core employees because they do their job well. We typically just are kind of hands off. Wrong. We should be spending more time with them, not a ton, but more time with them because we want to see them own more and lead more and do more. So we should be spending more time with them. And then our developers spending tons of time with them because they're the ones, if we invest in, really can become that core. And then where we spend most of our time, though, unfortunately, is with our underperformers, which make up about 20% of our team. So if you remember, I asked you to keep putting names in those categories: your core, your developers, and your underperformers. So hopefully you're kind of, maybe you're jotting those names down off to the side on a piece of paper. Maybe you just doing it in your mind mentally, but you've been thinking through the names of those individuals on your team. Now here's what's interesting. With underperformers, what happens is we tend to spend more time with them. Remember, going back to the Pareto principle, or the 80-20 rule, 80% of our problems come from 20% of our employees or our staff. So we're investing more of our time into our underperformers. We're investing more time, and they may not be coachable employees. They may be someone that just needs to be coached out. And I know that's a tough situation, and yet I know all of us woke up this morning, we ate our bowl of Wheaties, we had our Eye of the Tiger song playing, walked into the door to work and said, I signed up to work with my underperformers today. I am so excited to put out fires. Yay, right? No, we probably did not wake up thinking that at all. And although it's so unexciting and not fun at all to have to deal with that. What we have to do is get to a place where we're effectively working through dealing with those underperforming employees, or what we would like to say, those disengaged employees, which we're going to talk about in just a second. But so for the underperformers, here's the interesting part about an underperformer for us. They may actually be knowledgeable, and they may actually be very experienced. In fact, they may actually be able to outperform a core employee when it comes to skill, or let's say it's a sales team closing a sale, but they may lack that energy or not be very helpful. Maybe all about them. Maybe they're not focused or not dependable or not honest. And what can tend to happen, and I want to break down underperformers into kind of two different types of underperformers. And it's key to understand this, and key to understand where your underperformers might sit within one of these two columns. So I like to call the underperformers those employees who have kind of been bitten by or infected by disengage-itis, right? They're disengaged employees. We can think through them and know, maybe, as I mentioned, that you already have the name in mind of that individual or employee as we spend our time together today. But when it comes to those underperformers, there are really two different types of underperformers. There's that environmental underperformer and that true underperformer. And I'll say it this way, there's a big difference between the two. With that environmental underperformer, or that disengaged employee, what it typically looks like is this. Maybe the reasons that play into that, why it's environmental for them, is they're unhappy in their role. Maybe it's the wrong role. Maybe they're disengaged because they just don't fit the role they're in. Maybe there's another role on the team for them that you need to coach them into, move them into. If that space isn't open or available, that's your answer. You know that, hey, I may have to coach this person out because I just don't have that role for them that's probably going to be successful for them. But making room for them, maybe they are an employee that has experience, the skills that you're looking for, maybe a decent attitude. It's just for some reason they're disengaged. It's because they're unhappy in that role. Maybe it's their peers. So maybe they become that disengaged or underperformer because of a toxic employee next to them. So maybe it's their peers, or maybe they just don't get along or like the individuals they're working with, which, you know what, let's be honest or truthful. Sometimes there are people in the workforce or on the job in our companies that we don't always get along with or like, but to be professional, we still have to work with them. So helping coach that underperformer through that, knowing, hey, look, understand you don't like them, but you still have to work with them and be professional, which a lot of you actually mentioned at the beginning there through one of those things that you value the most in others is that professionalism. So it's interesting you guys stated that. Another thing is management. Maybe we're the problem. Maybe if you're here today spending time with us on this webinar, you're the problem. That's hard to admit, but at the same time, take an inventory. Realize that you might be the one that needs to work through some things and work through what you're struggling with in order to make the work environment better and kind of detox everything. Maybe it's leadership above you. Maybe you're in a management position where you have senior leadership over you, and maybe that senior leadership is the toxic kind of situation, and that's difficult and can cause some of our employees to be underperformers just because of the negativity that comes through that. Very difficult situation to work through, but is sometimes why we see underperformers on our team. Another thing might be cultural changes, right? So we have that individual that maybe changed from a service role to a sales role. That's a big change, and maybe you see some signs of underperformance or that disengaged employee because they haven't just been coached through the cultural shift of going from a service team to a more sales-oriented team, and you want to make sure that you're seeing those signs. So making sure that when you're looking at your underperforming employees, those disengaged employees that may be that toxic employee for you, that you're dealing with and recognizing, is it that environmental, or what we're going to talk about real quick, that true underperformer, that true disengaged employee. And what that might look like is that individual that has that excuse of, oh, I'm too valuable, and they almost kind of rest on their laurels or have that I'm higher than you mentality. I'm a high producer. I'm such a top performer that I don't have to worry about the details. I'm going to pass that work off onto other people, and don't think so much so about team effort and teamwork. Maybe it's that individual that says, I don't want to, or I can't. Something interesting to think about when you hear an employee use the words I can't, or maybe they say I can't but in different words. There's kind of 3 reasons why someone says I can't. Let me unpack those for you really quick. 3 reasons why someone would say I can't. One is I don't know how. So if an employee is disengaged and they just don't know how, that's an easy thing to work through, isn't it? Okay, great. I figured it out. I now realize why they can't or think they can't do their job, and I'm having to put out fires with them, is because they don't know how. So let me work on that, give them the knowledge, the skills, the tools. If they can't catch that or can't work through that, then we know the decision we have to come to. Maybe that I can't is because I'm not capable. So maybe it's a task that they're not capable of doing that we need to find another person on the team to handle for them, or it's a sign of the fact that they're just in over their head, and we may have to work through that in a different way and come to that point where they move on from the team. Or it's that answer of I just don't want to. And we all know that that's just unacceptable, right? There's no reason for anyone to use the excuse of I don't want to. And you have to work through that. So knowing where your employees are and knowing who that toxic employer, that underperformer is huge for you. And when you recognize that, you're able to work through it. And when you work through it, you can really begin to set the stage with that employee. So let's say we've moved to the point, we understand, we know that it's that toxic employee that's just really creating negativity and causing some serious issues for your team. And you get to the place where you realize I've got to meet with them. I've got to find a way to walk through some conversations with them. So the first thing you want to do is set the stage. So let's talk about setting the stage with that employee. For you, it might be a good idea to find a neutral environment for that moment, that meeting, that time to sit down with them. Maybe this is initial stages of you kind of finally realizing that this conflict is just really hard to be resolved with this individual. So I've got to have that one-on-one. So I want to find that neutral environment. Maybe it's not my office. You want to do your best to make it as set it up in a way where they don't become so defensive. So if I'm doing that, I really want to find that neutral environment. Maybe it's a conference room, maybe something like that. If it is your office and that's the only space that you can use, I would encourage you, make it as comfortable as possible. Put away your papers. Don't make sure it's not messy, some things like that. Just really make it as neutral as possible, so that that individual, because look, already coming in, we already know that there's conflict and there's going to be negativity to have to work through. So let's make it that situation where they're not walking on already kind of defensive. Another thing we want to make sure we do is schedule time, right? Schedule time to walk through this. Don't go off the cuff. If you're addressing the situation spur of the moment, typically emotions are going to play into that. You want to have time to process those emotions and work through them before you sit down with this individual. So make sure that you're scheduling time with them. It gives them time to do that too, right? So you want to make sure you're doing that. Prepare. Absolutely. You want to make sure that you're preparing yourself. Maybe it's notes, maybe it's specific facts or examples that you're going to walk through with them. Maybe it's at that point where it's a formal write-up with this individual and you're having to walk through that. Prepare for that, absolutely. And then communicate appropriately, right? We want to communicate through this process appropriately, and that kind of brings us to the communication toolbox that we have as leaders. And what we really want to make sure we're doing when we're walking through situations with these toxic employees is, first and foremost, have the right attitude, not only for ourselves, but bringing light to that for them. So we want to make sure that this is us together, not me against you. that setting up that meeting in a place where it's not pointing fingers. It's going to kind of come off that way to some extent anyway, right? It's very hard to completely pull that out of the equation, but we really want to make sure that we're really creating that environment where, hey, look, as we move forward as a team, I really want to make sure you're on board with us. I really want to make sure you're headed in the same direction. And lately, I've noticed these moments where you've just created this tension or negativity, whatever it might be. You could share an example in that moment, but really make it about us together, that we're pushing forward as a team, not me against you, right? Well, another thing we want to do is use facts, not feelings. If we base it off of feelings, we're setting ourselves up for a dangerous situation. I think of it like parenting. If I allow my feelings and my emotions to come into it with my 4-year-old when he gets out of hand, he loves to run around, has tons of energy, way too much energy. If you are a parent, you know what I am talking about. And there's those moments where my feelings can easily get into it, my emotions, maybe I get angry, and I can parent out of that anger. But what I want to do is calm down and point towards the behavior that is causing the issue and help my son work through that. Same thing with our employees, right? We want to make sure that we're walking through those moments with them, pointing to the example, the facts that we've seen, not our feelings or the feelings of others. Because if we do that, we're going to create a dangerous situation. And you just see anger fly around and all sorts of things that come out of that's just unhealthy for our team. Another thing is you want to prepare mentally, right? Going into those meetings, maybe it's multiple meetings you're having with this individual over time, if you set up a time frame to work through this situation through them, or maybe it's that formal write-up moment you're having to walk through a tough situation with them. Prepare mentally. Walk into that with the kind of all you want to prepare for all of those scenarios or situations that could happen, right? Prepare for the worst, prepare for the best. So we want to prepare mentally through all that. Prepare for that moment if that individual is just going to get up and walk out of the room because they're angry at you. Prepare for that moment where they surprise you and go, oh, wow, Bob, thank you. I really agree with that. You're right. I did act that way. By the way, if it happened that way all the time, I'm just saying our lives would be absolutely amazing, wouldn't they, as managers and leaders? So it's one thing that, we definitely want to prepare for, though, the good and the bad, whatever reaction may come. Know who you're meeting with, right? Great idea and great reason why behavioral assessments are so important to our teams, whether you use them in the hiring process or use them as a retention tool to work with your team in team building and dynamics. But I encourage you, use some form, just like the Omni assessment, to work through finding the preferred behaviors of your team. Because if you know that in advance, you can walk into that meeting knowing those preferred behaviors of that individual. I know how they typically like to communicate. I know how assertive they are or unassertive they are. I know how much attention to detail they have, or maybe they're that free spirit that just kind of likes to think outside the box. Knowing those things before walking into those meetings is huge when working through conflict with that toxic employee. And then really you want to make sure that you're setting those clear expectations and they're stated very clearly for them, and that you're communicating with next steps when you're walking through those moments with them. So quick poll for you here that I want to jump to, and just for you guys to check back into with me here, making sure you all are awake and alive with me. Do you have a personal improvement plan that is used consistently with your team? So go ahead and yes or no for that. I want to see how many of you out there use a consistent kind of personal improvement plan. That could be that formal write-up PIP, or it could be some type of improvement plan that you use as an evaluation process with your employees, whatever it might be. Do you have one that's used consistently? And then if you do have one, when do you utilize that plan? So is it at a 90-day review? Is it an annual review? Is it disciplinary action only? Or maybe all the above, right? So I'm seeing some responses here. Let's see, we've got about, it's pretty close to 50-50, just shy of 50-50, that many of you are using a personal improvement plan consistently. About 42%, about 58% are saying no. And then as far as those that do utilize the plan on a consistent basis, we're seeing quite a few of you, about half of you, use it for disciplinary action, which, rightfully so, we should be using that personal improvement plan during those moments. But I love the fact that many of you are also using them for all the above, for the reviews, for the disciplinary actions, through the coaching process. We should be using that personal improvement plan through all of those moments. And so it really ties into the fact that once we've set that stage with that employee, we've walked through, we've set that neutral environment, we've communicated, we've used all those tools in our communication toolbox, right? We want to make sure that clearly communicating the next steps with those individuals. So the thing here about next steps is when I'm walking through, whether it's a disciplinary action or maybe it's just prior to that disciplinary action, I'm sitting with that employee working through that situation, I really want to make sure that I'm setting out the company goal of what is and isn't acceptable to them and time frames for improvement, right? A lot of times what happens is we state those expectations and we don't always hear them back from them. What I encourage you to do, one, is when you clearly state those expectations to them during that time, is making sure that whether if you have them restate them to you or kind of ask, do you get it? Just confirming that they really have heard those expectations from you. But then also a big step that we miss sometimes is that time frame. We don't lay out that time frame with those employees. And what we really want to make sure we're doing is setting up that time frame for improvement, whether it's 30 days, whether it's 60 days, whether it's 90 days, whatever it might be you feel the necessity for that moment, depending on the severity of the problem, really. We want to make sure sometimes it may be immediate. You want to see immediate from those moments, immediate change, right? But the thing about the time frame and why that's so important is it allows you that accountability, right? If we don't have that, what do we have to fall back on? Especially if it's a disciplinary moment, we want to make sure that we've written that time frame in there. They've signed off on it. You signed off on that. However, HR's laid that process out for you. We're going to talk about that in just a moment when we look at actual example of a personal improvement plan. But the thing is, we really want to make sure we set that time frame out for accountability's sake, right? And then what we also want to do is allow them to become a part of the goal setting process. So here's the issue we've addressed. Here's what we had to walk through. I'm seeing you disengaged. You've been late every day this week, and you fired off at this individual in a negative way and in front of customers in the office. And what happened is you really created a tense situation. That can't happen again. So let's talk about some goals that you could set up to really work through that. I want to help you through this and allow them to become a part of the goal setting process. And I want to show you just a great example. We use it here at Omnia, and this will actually be downloadable for you at the end of our time together. But what's great about this is just a great simple kind of example of a personal improvement plan you could use. Now, mind you, you'd want to use it as a supplemental tool to what you already have in place, maybe for that disciplinary action moment. But let me say it this way too. I think sometimes what happens with a personal improvement plan or that disciplinary action is many of us sometimes we can just be so quick to slap that on someone, right? That kind of that pip slap, if you'd so call it. But maybe you've worked for a manager or a leader that's done that before. I know I have, and we don't want to get to the place where we're doing that all the time, but we definitely want to make sure we're pulling it out in the moments where we want to help and work with that employee, coaching them through those tough situations. So if you were to pull this out, they're going to list, or you're going to list, and you might even send this to them before that meeting, because then they may already walk in already aware of knowing what they need to improve, and you're just confirming with them and walking through talking about it, right? So 3 areas of improvement, they're going to list that out. You may already have it filled out prior to that meeting, and then below that, it's just going to carry through from those 3 areas of improvement, right? What am I going to do to improve in these areas? Some practical steps of what am I walking through in taking care of this? And then an essential part, right, is resources needed for resources needed from the manager. You want to make sure that you are listening to them and what they're asking of from you, right? Another thing that you want to make sure of is that at the bottom you can see that it has time frame. So we're setting up those 30-day goals, the 60-day goals, 90-day goals, 180-day goals, right? You want to make sure that you're setting up those time frames. What's great is this will set up a great system for accountability as well. So you can pull out at that 30-day mark, that 60-day mark. Maybe you meet with them at those intervals or a few of those intervals to review, hey, great, I see that improvement, or whoa, hold on, let's put on the brakes and readjust because I'm not seeing that improvement. And then maybe that's where that disciplinary action comes in to play. So that is just a great example for you of something that can take place there. A great resource for you to use, by the way, as well. So what you want to make sure, though, when you're doing this, whether you use this format or a format that you've already created, is look for realistic timeframes, right? You want to make sure you're looking for realistic timeframes. If it's a significant change that needs to happen over the course of time, let's make sure they're setting enough time up for them to be able to really see that change, that it's doable, right? And then it's personal. It's not a team goal. It's not some generic goal. We want to make sure, kind of use that SMART strategy setting those goals, right? That it's specific, that it's measurable, that it's attainable, that it's realistic, and that there's a time frame to it, right? It's timely. And what I would encourage you to do in those situations too, whether it's a disciplinary moment or a moment where we're sitting down prior to that disciplinary action and we're walking through that personal improvement plan, coaching plan, whatever it might be, is really restate those expectations. Make sure they're very clear and that the next steps are clear as well. We really want to make that very, very clear for all of them, okay? So once we've kind of done that, right? So we've walked through that, we've laid it out for them. Maybe it is that moment we've done that discipline action. Now we have to coach the plan, right? We've got to walk through coaching that plan. Want to simplify this process for you. I found this worked for me throughout my time in management and leadership through the various positions I've held in different industries. I'm an account manager here at Omnia now. I've been here for pretty close to a year. It's been a great time working with our clients to just invest in their teams, help them succeed, and just really maximize the potential of their employees. But something that I've found that just really, really works, and it's very simple. I think what we do so often is complicate the process. We make it so difficult sometimes in coaching or working through people. We create all these crazy systems and stuff like that. Encourage you, simplify it. It's 4 things, 4 simple things. You can see them there. First thing you want to do in the coaching process, whether it's with a toxic employee, this can also apply to any individual on our team. We want to clearly state expectations, goals, and priorities with them. So I've just walked through that time with them and had maybe that disciplinary action. Clearly state those expectations. Maybe it's a goal. Maybe it's that priority. We want to make sure they understand the mission and vision of where we're headed, right? And then once we've done that and they get it, you see that light bulb go off. We want to make sure that we observe those behaviors, right? So the very clear next step in our coaching process is that we observe those behaviors. Now we've had that tough, difficult meeting where we wanted to pull our teeth out instead of meet with them, right? Many of us sometimes would probably rather see the dentist. I don't know about you. That's probably one of my least favorite places to go, but it's necessary, right? I would probably rather go to the dentist than have to deal sometimes with that negative, toxic employee. Many of you could probably agree with that, right? But the thing is we've got to take care of it. And let's say we've had that difficult meeting, walk through that moment, set it up in the right way, use the right communication tools to walk through that process in a positive way, making sure it's more about us than me versus you, right? And we've stated those expectations. Now we have to step up as the manager or leader and make sure that we're observing the behaviors. We haven't just laid it out there for them and then gone off on the la-la land and kind of focused on everything else. Really have to make sure we're observing those behaviors. Then the other thing we want to do is, give immediate feedback. Why is it so important to give immediate feedback? And in fact, why don't you just type your answer in real quick at the bottom in the comments or questions? You can just type it in there real quick. why is it important to give immediate feedback? Why is that so important? I'll let you guys just type your answers in there in the bottom real quick. So, it's interesting when we observe behaviors, many times we don't always give that immediate feedback. So I'm seeing there positive reinforcement, right? Encouragement and buy-in. It's honest, maybe to acknowledge their effort, to reinforce or to correct. Here's the thing about great, I see that there gives them a sense of knowing they're doing what is needed, right? Timeliness is critical, and positive or strong reminder creates accountability, lets them know you noticed. Great responses there, guys. Here's the thing about immediate feedback. They don't forget what they've just heard from you with the clearly stated expectations and then the behaviors you're observing. If you give them immediate feedback, there's a greater likelihood that they'll carry forward in the right way instead of allowing them to continue to do it the wrong way. So immediate feedback is so important. Going back to my son, he's 4. If I let something go and don't give him feedback right away, maybe it's a good behavior or a negative behavior. If I don't give him feedback right away, what tends to happen? If I come back 4 hours later after that dude has already written on the wall with a crayon, probably not going to connect as well with him, right? I've got to make sure that I follow up that behavior right away. Hey, 10 minutes after I found that crayon on the wall, look, hey buddy, listen, crayon not so cool on the wall, right? Bad idea. So how about we keep the crayons on paper? You want to make sure you're giving that immediate feedback because it will connect and make more sense for them, right? Whether that's correction or like I've laid out for you, that recognized success. Maybe you give them that immediate feedback and that praise. Great thing to do, right? We always want to lead to that moment where they recognize success. The other thing with immediate feedback too is making sure we're allowing them the light bulb to go off. We want to make sure that light bulb goes off for them. We don't want to walk into those moments and point a finger and say, look what you did there, right? We kind of want to, I'd encourage you to come up with good questions. Walk into those moments with a good question, asking them about what took place. Allow the light bulb to go off for them, because then they're going to own that behavior far more than if you just point a finger and kind of bring light to what needs to happen and be corrected. Allow them to own it in that moment, right? And so just encourage you as you coach through that, that you really want to walk through what's agreed upon and coach that plan. And that's your role really as a leader, as a manager, to walk through those things with, whether it's a toxic employee or really any member of your team, right? So that would really apply to any member of your team. And lastly, really, if we walk through all of that, take the proper steps, really work through it, make sure we're talking to and have gathered our facts, really walk through a lot of those things with those toxic employees, we're going to end up in a place where there hopefully isn't any surprises. Many of you, maybe you've watched those amazing videos on Facebook or YouTube or wherever it might be. Like this picture, you can see the donkey, whatever that is, donkey horse sticking his head through the window of the car, and the boy is freaking out, right? My favorite, the one with the giraffe, sticks his head through the window of the car. I don't know why, by the way, people think they can sit in nature in their car with the windows open and animals nearby, that they're not going to attempt to try to do something to the car, right? But I love the one with the giraffe where he sticks his head through the window and licks the lady in the face with a long tongue. Love that one. Absolutely awesome. Really funny, right? But we don't want to end up in a place like that with our toxic employees. We want to make sure that we've coached up or coached out, that we've gotten to that place where maybe we do have to make that tough decision. And here's the thing, through consistent coaching, we're not going to end up with a lot of surprises, right? Another thing is, make sure that you're having frequent conversations, spending enough amount of time, but not allowing it to consume your time, right? We want to make sure that we're spending enough time with our core employees, with our developing employees, and not allowing our underperformers or our toxic employees to really monopolize our time, which so frequently happens, right? We've got to find a way to create balance there and spend time with them. Yes, you're going to have to spend time with them, going to have those frequent conversations, but making sure that it's not overwhelming or consuming us, right? Have your documentation in order. Don't walk into those disciplinary moments without your documentation. Bad idea. Make sure you have that in order, right? Especially if it's that tough decision where you're having to say, hey, this team's just not going to work out for you. It's time for you to, we're letting you go. You definitely want to make sure you have your documentation in order. Follow your HR policy and procedures that are in place with your organization, your company. Another thing is don't offer bad options. Great example of this, I have a very good friend that just walked through this. She is kind of on like a business relationship level, almost kind of like a someone who would go out and network and create business relationships for an organization. And she had a manager, and he was the one that was actually just really toxic for the team, just didn't do his job. It was just very difficult for her to work through it. And the senior leadership team above him walked into the situation walking through just the behaviors they had seen, the underperformance, that just everything had example after example after example of this guy doing just a really bad job, creating a lot of toxicity for the work environment. He was the manager. Here's what they did in that moment. And what I recommend you don't do. They offered some bad options. What they did was they said, okay, here's the deal. You can either choose to find another job elsewhere or take this position. This is what's in front of you. Well, that position was below, so they demoted him to a level below my friend, which was in that middle level position. So now he's in like a clerical admin position, which he really doesn't have the skills for and set out for. And that toxicity just increased. So don't offer bad options. Don't an A or B. Rip the Band-Aid off. It has to be ripped off. When you have that cut, that boo-boo that you work through, when you take that Band-Aid off, we don't like to take them off slow, right? Sometimes we have to take them off fast, and encourage you with that. At that last point there is make sure if you have to hire slow, fire fast. I know it's tough. I know it's a hard decision sometimes, but make sure you have that documentation in order and do it quickly because you want to save the rest of your team. Remember, going back to that statistic I shared with you, good employees are 54% more likely to quit when they work with a toxic employee. So be mindful of that as you work through those situations with your toxic employees, that difficult, tough person that you're working with on your team. And just want to end our time together with this quote by Ronald Reagan. And just says, peace is not absence of conflict. It is the ability to handle conflict by peaceful means. So if you're a manager, if you're a leader, if you're an HR, if you're whatever it might be as you sit in on this presentation today, know that conflict will always be present, but you've got to be able to find a way to handle it in a peaceful means. You have to be bigger than allowing your emotions, allowing your attitude or the difficult or the toughness about the situation to overcome you. Making sure that you handle it in a way where in a peaceful means, so that you work through that conflict that really pushes your team forward as a whole, the organization forward as a whole. It's a win-win for everyone. And although that may be tough and you have to let someone go sometimes at some point, it really in the end may be a win-win for them because there may be somewhere else that's even better fit for them. And sometimes walking through a tough situation in life like that may cause them to wake up and realize it and move on to another position and do a better job elsewhere. But for you, your goal and your mission and your vision is what you have to carry forward with. And sometimes when some people can't line up with that, we have to make that tough decision and walk through it accordingly. So what I want to do is we have a few moments left here, and just want to open it up for any questions that you may have. If you have any questions, feel free to type that in to our chat box there. And going to go ahead and just bring up some resources for you there. So feel free, type in your questions, comments, anything that you might have there in the chat box. If you would like, you can check out some links that we have for you coming up next month, by the way, in our July webinar series, or not a series, sorry, we're just doing a one-time thing in July. It's going to be diversity inclusion in the workplace, so feel free to come in with that one. Would love to have you join us for that. You can also see some downloads, so we got that coaching companion for you there, that personal improvement plan, and then you can also check out or download the presentation from us there as well. And then if you have any questions or would like to just hear any other thoughts or have a conversation about anything that we talked about today, feel free to reach out to me. My email or contact information is there for you. Would love to hear from you. Thank you so much for being with us. Real quick, kind of one question that we're typically asked is, how many meetings would you have with someone prior to carrying forward with a disciplinary action? And in regards to that question, I would say it really depends on the severity of the situation. If it's some type of behavior that needs to change over a course of time, it may be several meetings. I would say probably in the range of about 3 to 4. If it's something that really hit the roof and someone just went off the rocker, would really encourage you. It probably is going to lend more towards that kind of one meeting before that disciplinary action, or maybe even be a disciplinary action, that kind of verbal warning, not necessarily kind of a written or formal warning. But think through those things as you meet with those individuals and work through those tough situations. And if you're one of those blessed, amazing, awesome leaders that has no one on your team that is a toxic employee, then kudos to you. You are lucky. Happy for you. Enjoy the world you are currently living in, right? But if you are that individual, that manager, leader who has that toxic employee, work through it. I know it's tough, but you'll get it. Again, thank you so much for being with us. Really appreciate you being here today, and enjoy our resources and our times together. Don't forget, check us out on LinkedIn and Facebook and YouTube. Take care.